Jinwoo Park wiped the sweat from his forehead as he crawled out from under the power generator. The maintenance bay of the ship New Seoul was hot and cramped, but he did not mind. He had been fixing things since he was 12 years old. Tools felt right in his hands. Another successful repair, he said to himself, watching the green lights flicker back to life on the control panel. The diplomatic ship would have power for another year without problems. Jinwoo was 28 years old and ordinary in every way that mattered in the galaxy. He was not tall like the warrior Dromax aliens. He could not read minds like the Kelrani. He could not live for thousands of years like the Crystal Vorthak. He was just human, and humans were known for being good with machines but not much else. The ship shook slightly as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Through the small window, Jinwoo could see the Imperial capital growing larger. The massive space station looked like a small moon covered in lights and towers. Millions of beings from dozens of different alien species lived and worked there. "We are here for engine repairs," Captain Yoon had told the crew that morning. 3 days maximum. Nobody causes trouble. Jinwoo packed his tools. The New Seoul carried diplomats and trade officials between human colonies and alien worlds. It was not an important ship, and humans were not an important species. They had been part of the Galactic Empire for only 50 years. The aliens still saw them as newcomers who had gotten lucky. So-Jin Kim poked her head into the maintenance bay. She was the ship's chief engineer, 5 years older than Jinwoo and much smarter. "The docking clamps are acting up again," she said. "Can you look at them?" "Sure thing," Jinwoo replied. He grabbed his tool belt and followed her through the narrow corridors. As they walked, Taehyun Lee joined them. He was the security officer, built like a soldier but with kind eyes. "Did you guys hear? There is going to be an emperor selection today," he said. "The old emperor died," So-Jin asked, 3 days ago. "Heart failure, they say. The Throne of Stars will choose a new one this afternoon." Jinwoo had heard stories about the Throne of Stars his whole life. It was older than human civilization, maybe older than humans themselves. The story said it was alive somehow, that it could think and feel. Every few hundred years when an emperor died, it would choose a replacement from any species in the galaxy. "Who do you think it will pick?" Jinwoo asked as they reached the docking bay. "Probably Prince Veltar," Taehyun said. "The Kelrani have the strongest fleet right now." "Or War Queen Jis," So-Jin added. "The Zerani control 5 sectors." Jinwoo nodded as he opened the control panel for the docking clamps. The aliens they mentioned were powerful beings who ruled entire star systems. The thought of a human being chosen was so unlikely that nobody even joked about it. The repair took 2 hours. When Jinwoo finished, the other crew members had already left to explore the station. Captain Yoon had given everyone permission to look around, as long as they stayed out of the restricted areas. Jinwoo wandered through the public sections of the Imperial capital. The corridors were huge, built to accommodate the largest alien species. He felt very small walking among creatures that were 3 times his height and covered in scales or crystals or metal. He bought a simple meal from a food vendor run by a friendly Kelrani, who seemed surprised that a human spoke basic, galactic standard so well. Then he found himself following signs toward the central chamber where the emperor selection would take place. A crowd had gathered outside the ceremonial hall. Security barriers kept most people back, but Jinwoo could see through the transparent walls. Inside, representatives from dozens of species stood in perfect lines. They wore expensive clothes and carried symbols of their power. The Throne of Stars sat in the center of the chamber. It looked like a chair made of living crystal, constantly shifting colors from deep blue to bright silver. Patterns of light moved through it like blood through veins. Just looking at it made Jinwoo feel strange, like something was watching him. Prince Veltar stepped forward first. He was tall and graceful with the pale skin and silver eyes of the Kelrani. His telepathic abilities were legendary. When he approached the throne, it glowed softly but did not react. War Queen Jis came next. She looked like a giant insect covered in black armor, with 4 arms and eyes like red jewels. The throne's light grew brighter, but still nothing happened. One by one, the most powerful beings in the galaxy approached the ancient artifact. Lords and generals, priests and admirals, rulers of worlds and commanders of fleets. The throne acknowledged each of them but chose none. Jinwoo watched from outside, fascinated despite himself. He had never seen so much power and wealth in one place. These beings could destroy planets with a word or create new ones with their technology. A maintenance alert buzzed on his communicator. The new soul's environmental systems needed attention. Jinwoo sighed and turned away from the ceremony. Even here, watching history unfold, duty called. He made his way through the service corridors that maintenance workers used. These passages were narrow and cramped, designed for efficiency rather than comfort. They connected every part of the massive station through hidden routes. Jinwoo was checking his route on a wall display when the lights went red. Emergency signals flashed in the corridor. His communicator crackled with confused voices from the station's maintenance department. Power surge in Section 7, someone said. Main conduits are overloading. Environmental? Systems failing in the ceremonial chamber. Another voice added. Jinwoo knew the station's layout better than most aliens, who had lived there for years. Humans had a gift for understanding complex systems. He could reach the problem area faster through the maintenance tunnels than anyone using the main corridors. He ran through the narrow passages, his tool belt bouncing against his hip. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows on the walls. Behind him, he could hear other maintenance workers trying to follow, but they were too big for the smallest tunnels. The ceremonial chamber's service entrance was hidden behind a decorative panel. Jinwoo opened it and squeezed through, expecting to find an empty maintenance area. Instead, he found himself at the edge of the main chamber itself. The ceremony was still going on. The alien nobles stood frozen as their environmental suits activated to protect them from the failing life support. In the center of the room, the throne of stars pulsed with increasing urgency. Jinwoo realized he would have to cross the chamber to reach the main power junction. There was no other way. He stepped onto the polished floor, hoping nobody would notice one small human technician. But the moment his feet touched the ceremonial dais, everything changed. The throne of stars erupted in light so bright that Jinwoo had to close his eyes. He felt a strange pulling sensation, as if invisible hands were guiding him forward. His feet moved on their own, carrying him toward the ancient artifact. When the light faded, Jinwoo found himself sitting on the throne of stars. A crown made of pure energy had appeared on his head. The crystal beneath him hummed with warmth and power. The chamber was completely silent. Then Prince Veltar spoke, his voice filled with disbelief. This is impossible. War Queen Jis clicked her mandibles in anger. The throne has malfunctioned. A human cannot be emperor. But the throne's light grew even brighter, and Jinwoo knew with absolute certainty that it had made its choice. The silence in the ceremonial chamber lasted only a few seconds. Then chaos erupted. Get that human off the throne, Admiral Thok roared. The massive Dromax warrior was 3 meters tall and covered in bone armor that grew from his own body. His voice sounded like grinding stone. This is an insult to every true warrior in the galaxy. Jinwoo tried to stand up, but the throne seemed to hold him in place. The crystal had molded itself around his body like it was meant for him. The crown of energy on his head felt heavier than lead, but somehow right. There must be some mistake, Duchess Miralyn said. Her Kelrani voice was musical but cold. The throne has never chosen such a primitive species. How can a being without telepathic abilities understand the minds of others? Lord Zektos stepped forward, his crystal body ringing like a bell with each movement. The Vorthak were ancient, older than most stars. Humans live barely 100 years, he said. They are like mayflies. How can a mayfly rule those who have seen civilizations rise and fall? Jinwoo looked around desperately for help. The alien nobles surrounded him in a circle, their faces showing everything from anger to disgust to simple confusion. Some looked like they wanted to laugh. Others looked like they wanted to kill him. Please, he said, his voice sounding small in the vast chamber. I don't understand what happened. I was just trying to fix the power systems. Fix the power systems? Prince Veltar repeated. His silver eyes glowed with telepathic energy. The future emperor of the galaxy was crawling through maintenance tunnels like a common worker? The mocking laughter that followed made Jinwoo's face burn with shame. He was still wearing his work clothes, stained with grease and sweat. His tool belt looked ridiculous next to the fine robes and armor of the alien nobles. This proves the throne is broken, Admiral Thok declared. We must reset it and choose again. No soft-skin welding boy can command the Dromax warrior fleets. The ceremony must be repeated, War Queen Jis agreed. Her insect-like mandibles clicked with approval. Perhaps the power surge damaged the throne's decision-making systems. But before anyone could act, a new voice spoke from the entrance to the chamber. The ceremony cannot be repeated. Everyone turned to see High Sage Yulven floating into the room. The ancient ethereal looked like a pillar of glowing mist wrapped in ceremonial robes. He was older than anyone could remember, a keeper of the Empire's most sacred laws. The throne of stars has made its choice, Yulven continued. According to the Codex of Succession, written in the first days of the Empire, the throne's decision is final and absolute. No power in the galaxy can overturn it. But surely there are exceptions, Prince Veltar protested. Emergency provisions for when the throne selects someone obviously unfit to rule. There are no exceptions, the High Sage replied firmly. The throne has never made an error in 3,000 years. Why would it start now? Jinwoo could see doubt in the old ethereal's misty form, but the law was clear. Like it or not, Jinwoo Park, maintenance technician from the human colony ship New Seoul, was now emperor of the galaxy. The next few hours passed in a blur. Palace guards escorted Jinwoo to the imperial quarters, while the alien nobles argued in emergency sessions. His crewmates from the New Seoul were brought to him, looking as confused as he felt. Jinwoo, what in the galaxy happened? Sojin asked. She stared at the crown that still floated above his head, unable to disappear despite his attempts to remove it. I honestly don't know, he replied. 1 minute I was fixing a power conduit. The next minute I was sitting on the most powerful throne in known space. Tae-hyun paced around the room, checking for hidden surveillance devices out of habit. The whole station is talking about it. Half the species are calling for your immediate removal. The other half are trying to figure out how to use you for their own purposes. As if summoned by his words, the first group of advisors arrived within the hour. They came in ones and twos, representatives of the major alien powers who spoke of duty and service while their eyes calculated how best to control him. Your Imperial Majesty, said Counselor Rixvel, a smooth-talking Kelrani with dead eyes. The transition of power must be handled carefully. Allow us to guide you through these difficult first days. The Dromax fleets await your orders, declared General Morthak. He was Admiral Thok's younger brother, only slightly less intimidating. Of course, military matters are complex. Perhaps you should delegate such decisions to those with more experience. Minister Jolven of the Vorthak spoke last. Economic policy requires deep understanding of market forces spanning multiple sectors. Fortunately, my ministry has prepared comprehensive plans that require only your approval. Jinwoo realized what was happening. They planned to make him a puppet emperor, a figurehead who would sign whatever they put in front of him while they ran the galaxy from behind the scenes. The problem was he had no idea how to stop them. The advisors wasted no time testing their new puppet. Within days, they presented him with 3 urgent situations that needed immediate attention. The first was a border war between the Kelrani Federation and the Zerani hives. Both sides demanded imperial intervention, but any decision would anger the other. Traditional solution: massive fleet deployment to enforce peace through overwhelming force. The second was an economic crisis in the Outer Rim colonies. Food shipments were being delayed, causing unrest among species that depended on trade for survival. Traditional solution: emergency subsidies that would cost trillions of credits. The third was a request from the Dromax warrior clans for permission to launch a punitive expedition against pirates in neutral space. Traditional solution: approve the mission and look the other way when civilian casualties mounted. These are routine matters, Counselor Rixvel assured him. Simple approvals for policies that have maintained stability for centuries. Jinwoo stared at the documents. Each one was hundreds of pages long, written in legal language that he could barely understand. The advisors stood around him, waiting for his signature with poorly hidden impatience. I need time to study these, he said. Time is a luxury we don't have, General Morthak replied. The border situation grows worse every day. Ships are dying while you read paperwork. Perhaps His Imperial Majesty lacks the intellectual capacity for such complex decisions, Minister Jolven suggested with false sympathy. We could simplify the documents for easier understanding. The insult was clear, and Jinwoo felt his face flush with anger. But he also noticed something else. The advisors were pushing too hard, too fast. They wanted him to make decisions without thinking, to establish a pattern of dependence on their guidance. I said I need time, he repeated, more firmly this time. That evening, alone with Sojin and Tae-hyun, Jinwoo spread the documents across a table in his private quarters. Help me understand what they're really asking for, he said. Sojin, with her engineer's mind for systems and processes, was the first to spot the problems. This border war solution doesn't address the root cause, she said. It just postpones the conflict and makes it more expensive. Tae-hyun, trained in military tactics, found flaws in the anti-piracy mission. They're not hunting pirates, he said. This deployment pattern looks more like a territorial grab. The Dromax want to establish permanent bases in neutral space. The more they studied, the more obvious it became that the routine solutions were designed to benefit the advisor's home species, while creating new problems for Jinwoo to solve. By the end of the week, news networks across the galaxy were broadcasting footage of the incompetent human emperor, who couldn't even approve simple administrative decisions. Comedians made jokes about humans being promoted beyond their abilities. Some species openly called for rebellion. The mockery hurt more than Jinwoo had expected. He had never wanted to be emperor, but being treated like a cosmic joke made him angry. The worst part was knowing that many of the insults were probably justified. What did a maintenance worker know about ruling a galaxy? But late at night, when the palace was quiet and the crown finally dimmed enough for him to sleep, Jinwoo found himself thinking about the throne of stars. Why had it chosen him? The ancient artifact had rejected princes and generals, warlords and telepaths. What did it see in an ordinary human that even he couldn't recognize? The answer would have to wait. Tomorrow would bring new crises, new attempts to manipulate him, and new opportunities to prove that the greatest joke in galactic history might actually be something else entirely. Everything changed when the Korthdi attacked. Jinwoo was reviewing trade agreements in his office when the emergency alerts began. Red lights flashed throughout the Imperial Palace as urgent messages flooded in from across the galaxy. Your Imperial Majesty, General Morthak burst into the room without ceremony. The Korthdi Empire has launched a full rebellion. 3 sectors are under attack. We need your authorization for immediate military response. Jinwoo had learned about the Korthdi during his crash course in galactic politics. They were a warrior species similar to the Dromax, but even more aggressive. For decades they had been forced to accept imperial rule, but they had never truly submitted. How bad is it? Jinwoo asked. 17 worlds have fallen in the first wave, Counselor Rixvel reported, his Kelrani features pale with worry. Their fleets are moving toward core imperial territory. Traditional response protocols call for massive fleet deployment and planetary bombardment of rebel strongholds. Minister Jolven brought up tactical displays showing the scope of the crisis. Red zones spread across 3 sectors like a disease. We estimate it will take 3 years and cost 10 million lives to crush this rebellion using standard imperial doctrine, he said. Jinwoo stared at the numbers. 10 million lives. The advisors spoke about mass death like it was just another administrative cost. What about negotiation? He asked. The 3 advisors exchanged glances. General Morthak spoke first. Your Imperial Majesty, the Korthdi only understand strength. They view any attempt at diplomacy as weakness. Previous emperors have tried negotiation. It always fails. The only language rebels understand is violence, Counselor Rixvel added. Swift, overwhelming violence that crushes their will to resist. Jinwoo looked at the tactical displays again. His human mind saw something different than the aliens did. Where they saw rebellious territories to be reconquered, he saw patterns of movement and logistics that made little sense for a pure military campaign. Give me 12 hours, he said. I want to study this before making any decisions. 12 hours. General Morthak's bone armor rattled with indignation. Every moment we delay allows the rebels to consolidate their positions. The proper response is immediate overwhelming force. 12 hours, Jinwoo repeated firmly. That night he called Sojin and Tae-hyun to his private study. The 3 humans spread tactical maps across every available surface, trying to understand what the Korthdi were really doing. Look at their target selection, Sojin said, pointing to the invaded worlds. They're not going after the most valuable planets or the strongest military bases. They're hitting communication hubs and supply depots. Tae-hyun nodded. This isn't a conquest. It's a disruption campaign. They want to cut the Imperial response into pieces, make coordination impossible. Jinwoo studied the patterns until his eyes hurt. Humans had fought similar campaigns throughout their history, from ancient guerrilla wars to modern asymmetric conflicts. The Korthdi were using tactics that would be familiar to any human military historian. What if we fought back the same way? He said suddenly. What do you mean? Sojin asked. The advisors want to use Imperial doctrine. Big fleets, massive battles, overwhelming force. But what if we used human doctrine instead? Small unit tactics, intelligence warfare, turning their own strategies against them. Over the next 6 hours, the three humans developed a completely different approach to the Korth Dai rebellion. Instead of gathering massive fleets for grand battles, they would use fast ships and small teams to strike at rebel weak points. Instead of demanding surrender, they would offer something the Korth Dai had never expected: genuine autonomy. When the advisors returned in the morning, expecting to receive authorization for traditional military response, Jinwu shocked them with his alternative plan. "Absolutely not," General Morthak declared. "These tactics are unknown to Imperial doctrine. There is no precedent for such methods. The Korth Dai will see this as weakness," Councillor Rixvel protested. "They will exploit any mercy you show them." Minister Jolvan was more diplomatic but equally opposed. "Your Imperial Majesty, with respect, these are untested theories. The rebellion threatens the stability of the entire galaxy. This is not the time for experiments." But Jinwu had made his decision. "We try it my way first. If it fails after 3 months, we can still use your approach." 3 months? General Morthak's voice rose to a roar. "The rebellion will have spread to 6 sectors by then." "Then we better make sure it doesn't fail," Jinwu replied. The next 3 months became the most intense period of Jinwu's life. Instead of sitting in the palace and signing orders, he became directly involved in planning and coordination. His human perspective revealed opportunities that the alien advisors had completely missed. The first breakthrough came when Sojin cracked the Korth Dai communication codes. Her engineering background helped her understand their encryption methods better than Imperial cryptographers, who had been trying for decades. "They're not just warriors," she reported to Jinwu. "They have poets, philosophers, artists. Their culture values honor and independence above everything else. They're not rebelling because they're evil. They're rebelling because they feel dishonored by Imperial rule." This insight led to Jinwu's most controversial decision. Instead of jamming Korth Dai communications, he ordered propaganda broadcasts that appealed to their sense of honor. The messages acknowledged their courage and offered them something no previous emperor had ever considered: real self-governance within the Imperial framework. "You want to broadcast what?" Councillor Rixvel demanded when he learned of the plan. "We're going to tell them the truth," Jinwu said, "that we respect their culture and their right to govern themselves. That being part of the Empire doesn't have to mean giving up their identity." The second breakthrough came from Taihyun's analysis of Korth Dai military doctrine. "They're following ancient warrior codes," he explained. "Rules about honorable combat and protecting non-combatants. If we can show them that their leaders are violating these codes, we can turn their own people against them." Jinwu authorized precision strikes that targeted only military installations, carefully avoiding civilian casualties. He ordered the release of captured Korth Dai soldiers who promised to carry messages of Imperial mercy back to their people. Most importantly, he offered amnesty to any Korth Dai world that surrendered, along with guaranteed autonomy and representation in Imperial government. The alien advisors predicted disaster, but something unexpected began to happen. Korth Dai commanders started switching sides. Entire worlds surrendered without fighting when they realized they could keep their culture while gaining Imperial protection and trade benefits. Captain Nalvera was the first alien officer to openly support Jinwu's methods. The Kelrani fleet commander had initially been skeptical, but when she saw the results, she became a convert. "Your approach is brilliant," she told Jinwu during a strategy meeting. "You're not conquering the Korth Dai. You're recruiting them. They're becoming allies instead of prisoners." Engineer Rex Lyon of the Vorthak agreed. "The technological solutions you've developed for rapid deployment and precision strikes are revolutionary. Our own engineers are studying your methods." Even some Dromax warriors began to respect Jinwu's leadership. Commander Velthok, who had initially called him a soft human weakling, admitted that his tactics were effective. "You fight like a Dromax thinks," Velthok said, which was the highest compliment a warrior could give. "You understand that the best victory is one that creates no future enemies." The rebellion collapsed in exactly 3 months, just as Jinwu had predicted. But instead of 10 million casualties, fewer than 50,000 beings had died. Instead of devastated worlds that would take decades to rebuild, the former rebel territories were already integrating peacefully into the Empire. The galactic news networks could not ignore such dramatic results. Suddenly, the incompetent human emperor was being called a tactical genius. Species that had mocked him began requesting audiences. Young officers from a dozen different races wanted to study his methods. But Jinwu's success created new problems. The traditional power structure of the empire was built on fear and overwhelming force. His methods threatened the authority of every alien noble who had maintained control through intimidation. In the shadows, a new conspiracy began to form. If they could not control the human emperor, they would have to destroy him. The Shadow Consortium was born from this desperation, led by beings who preferred the old ways of ruling through terror. Jinwu had won his first great victory, but he had no idea that his greatest test was yet to come. The galaxy was watching now, and not everyone liked what they saw. Some beings feared that if humans could revolutionize warfare, they might revolutionize everything else as well. That possibility terrified the Shadow Consortium more than any rebellion ever could. The attack came during the Festival of Unification, when the capital was filled with beings from across the galaxy celebrating peace. Jinwu was walking through the festival grounds with Sojin, watching alien children play games that had been ancient when humans first looked at the stars. Taehyun followed at a discreet distance, his security training making him suspicious of crowds even during peaceful celebrations. The first sign of trouble was a distant explosion that shook the ground beneath their feet. Jinwu looked up to see black smoke rising from the direction of the Imperial Palace. That wasn't fireworks, Sojin said grimly. Taehyun's communicator crackled with urgent reports. Multiple explosions across the capital. Armed mechs attacking civilian targets. This is a coordinated assault. As they ran toward the nearest shelter, Jinwu saw the attackers for the first time. Massive war machines stomped through the festival grounds, their weapons firing indiscriminately into the crowd. But these were not foreign invaders. The mechs bore Imperial markings. Those are our own military units, Taehyun said in disbelief. Someone has turned Imperial war machines against the capital. They took cover behind a collapsed building as one of the mechs marched past. Jinwu could see its pilot through the transparent armor. A Dromax warrior, his bone armor decorated with symbols Jinwu recognized as belonging to Duke Vorketh's personal guard. It's the Shadow Consortium, he realized. They're making their move. The conspiracy had been building for months while Jinwu dealt with the Korth Dai rebellion. Noble families who felt threatened by his reforms had united under Duke Vorketh and Magistrate Yindal. They commanded enough military resources to launch a coup, especially if they struck while Jinwu was away from the palace defenses. But their timing was terrible. The festival grounds were filled with innocent civilians from dozens of species. Men, women, and children who had come to celebrate. Unity were now running for their lives as stolen war machines hunted them through the streets. Jinwu watched a family of Kelrani refugees trip and fall as a mech approached them. The machine's weapons powered up, preparing to fire on helpless civilians. Something inside Jinwu snapped. He had spent months being careful, diplomatic, trying to prove himself worthy of the throne of stars. But watching innocent people about to die because of his political enemies made him forget about caution. "Cover me," he told Taehyun, and ran toward the mech. "Jinwu, no!" Sojin shouted, but he was already moving. The mech pilot saw him coming and turned the massive machine to face him. Jinwu was unarmed, wearing simple festival clothes, running straight at a war machine that could crush a building. It should have been suicide. But as Jinwu ran, something extraordinary happened. The throne of stars, kilometers away in the Imperial Palace, began to glow. The crown that usually floated above his head materialized in brilliant light, and suddenly Jinwu could feel everything. He could sense the position of every loyal Imperial guard in the capital. He could feel the fear and determination of civilians trying to escape. He could perceive the communication signals between the rebel mechs and understand their tactical plans instantly. Most importantly, he could feel the throne itself, ancient and vast and patient, finally revealing its true nature. The throne had been waiting for this moment, not just since Jinwu sat upon it, but for centuries. It had watched emperor after emperor rule through tradition and fear, waiting for someone who would truly understand its purpose. Power flowed through Jinwu, but not the kind of power he had expected. He did not become physically stronger or gain telepathic abilities. Instead, he became the perfect coordinator, able to process information and make decisions at speeds that seemed impossible. The mech fired its weapons, but Jinwoo was no longer where the pilot expected him to be. The throne's awareness showed him exactly when to dodge, how to move to avoid the massive machine's attacks while getting closer to its weak points. All loyal units. This is Emperor Jinwoo, he spoke into his communicator, his voice somehow reaching every Imperial frequency simultaneously. The Shadow Consortium has stolen military equipment for a coup attempt. Protect civilians first, disable stolen mechs second. His enhanced perception allowed him to coordinate the defense perfectly. He could see which evacuation routes were safe, which Imperial units needed reinforcement, which enemy positions were vulnerable to counterattack. Captain Nalvera, take your fleet to Grid 77 Alpha. 3 stolen mechs are trapped there but still dangerous. Commander Velthok, the civilians in Sector 12 need immediate escort to the shelters. Enemy forces are moving to cut off their escape. Engineer Rex Lyon, can you shut down the stolen mechs remotely? I'm sending you their control frequencies now. The battle raged for 3 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt once Jinwoo fully connected with the throne's power. The Shadow Consortium had planned for traditional Imperial tactics. They had not planned for an emperor who could see every piece of the battlefield simultaneously and coordinate responses in real time. Duke Vorketh himself finally appeared in the largest mech, determined to kill Jinwoo personally. The massive Dromax warrior had enhanced his machine with additional weapons and armor. You are not worthy to rule. Vorketh's voice boomed from the mech's speakers. Humans are weak. The galaxy needs strong leadership. Jinwoo stood his ground as the war machine approached, its weapons charging for a killing blow. But he was no longer just Jinwoo Park, maintenance worker from a human colony ship. He was the chosen of the Throne of Stars, connected to an intelligence older than most civilizations. You're right about one thing, Jinwoo said, his voice carrying across the battlefield through every communication system in the capital. The galaxy needs strong leadership, but strength isn't about size or weapons or the ability to destroy. Real strength is about bringing people together, protecting the innocent, and finding solutions that don't require violence. As Vorketh's mech fired, Jinwoo reached out through the throne's power and touched the mind of every being in the capital. For a brief moment, humans and aliens, civilians and soldiers, felt what it was like to see through the Emperor's enhanced perception. They saw the battle not as chaos, but as a pattern that could be understood and controlled. They saw their enemies not as monsters, but as frightened beings who had chosen the wrong path. Most importantly, they saw themselves as part of something larger, a galactic community that was worth protecting. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Imperial forces moved with perfect coordination, while the Shadow Consortium's stolen mechs found themselves surrounded and outnumbered. Vorketh's own machine was disabled by precise strikes that destroyed its weapons while leaving the pilot unharmed. When the fighting ended, Jinwoo collapsed from exhaustion. The connection to the throne's full power was not something a human mind could maintain for long. But the battle was won, and the conspiracy was broken. In the aftermath, as medics treated the wounded and engineers assessed the damage, an ancient figure approached Jinwoo. Prophet Dixale was an ethereal sage even older than High Sage Yulven, a being who remembered the first days of the Empire. Now you understand, the prophet said, his misty form glowing with approval. The Throne of Stars was never meant to choose the strongest ruler or the most traditional. It was meant to guide the galaxy toward unity, not domination. Jinwoo nodded weakly. The crown had faded back to its normal gentle glow, but he could still feel the throne's presence in his mind like a warm echo. Previous emperors ruled through fear or tradition, Prophet Dixal continued. They maintained order by keeping species separate and suspicious of each other. But you rule through connection and hope. You show beings what they could become if they worked together. As Jinwoo looked out over the festival grounds, where humans and aliens worked side by side to help the wounded and clear debris, he finally understood why the throne had chosen him. It had not been looking for the most powerful candidate or the most qualified. It had been waiting for someone who could help the galaxy become something new. The Shadow Consortium's attack had failed, but more importantly, it had revealed the throne's true wisdom. The ancient artifact had seen potential in humanity that even humans had not recognized in themselves. Jinwoo Park was no longer just a maintenance worker who had stumbled into the wrong place at the wrong time. He was the emperor the galaxy needed, chosen by an intelligence that understood the future better than any living being. The real work was just beginning. 2 years after the Shadow Consortium's failed coup, the galaxy was changing in ways no one had imagined possible. Jin Woo stood on the observation deck of the Soul's Light, watching the first interspecies colony take shape around a distant star. Human engineers worked alongside Vorthak architects to design buildings that could house a dozen different types of beings. Kelrani telepaths helped Dromax warriors communicate with species that spoke no common language. It was beautiful and chaotic and completely unprecedented. The Council of Species just approved the Deep Space Exploration Initiative, So Jin reported, joining him at the viewport. She wore the formal robes of the Imperial Empress now, though she still kept a set of engineering tools on her belt. Old habits were hard to break. How many species signed up? Jinwoo asked. 47, including some we've never worked with before. The Whisper folk from the edge of known space want to share their navigation techniques. The Crystal Singers offered to help map gravitational anomalies. Jinwoo smiled. The Council of Species had been his boldest reform, giving every intelligent species in the galaxy an equal voice in imperial government. The old nobles had predicted chaos, but democracy seemed to work better than dictatorship when it came to managing a diverse galactic civilization. Any word from Dr. Subin? He asked. Her translation project is ahead of schedule. Universal communication devices should be ready for mass production within 6 months. Think about it, Jinwoo. Every being in the galaxy will be able to talk to every other being, regardless of species or language. It was Dr. Subin Choi's breakthrough in xenobiology that had made the translation technology possible. Her work had revealed that all intelligent species shared certain basic communication patterns, probably inherited from some ancient common ancestor. By building on those patterns, she had created the first truly universal translator. Tae Hyun's voice came over the ship's communication system. Your Imperial Majesty, Commander Mi-Ray requests permission to begin the patrol route. Granted, Jinwoo replied. He still felt strange being called Your Imperial Majesty, but he had learned to accept the formal titles that came with his position. Commander Mi-Ray Song led the first integrated Imperial fleet, with officers from 23 different species working together on ships designed using the best technology from all their civilizations. Her flagship was a marvel of cooperative engineering, faster and more capable than anything built by a single species. The changes went beyond technology and politics. The galaxy's economy had grown by 300% as trade barriers disappeared, and species began sharing resources freely. Border conflicts had dropped to historic lows because disputes were now handled through negotiation rather than warfare. Art and culture flourished as beings discovered new ways to express themselves by learning from alien perspectives. But Jinwoo's greatest challenge was yet to come. The Void Wraiths had returned. Emergency. Message from the Outer Rim, Tae Hyun announced, his voice tense with concern. Long-range sensors have detected massive ships of unknown design. They're not responding to communication attempts, and they're heading directly for inhabited systems. Jinwoo felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature. Ancient records spoke of the Void Wraiths, creatures from beyond the galaxy who had attacked once before thousands of years ago. They had been driven back only after a terrible war that had cost billions of lives. How long until they reached the first inhabited world? Jinwoo asked. 3 weeks, maybe less. Their ships are faster than anything we've ever seen. The emergency session of the Council of Species was unlike anything in galactic history. Representatives from dozens of worlds appeared via hologram, their faces showing fear but also determination. The old empire would have ordered the outer worlds to evacuate, while the core systems prepared their defenses. Jinwoo chose a different path. We stand together, he announced to the assembled delegates. Every species, every world, every ship. The Void Wraiths may be powerful, but they've never faced a united galaxy before. Ambassador Dong Jun Kwok worked around the clock to coordinate the diplomatic effort. His Treaty of Infinite Stars had officially ended the age of imperial conquest, replacing it with voluntary cooperation. Now that cooperation would be tested against the ultimate threat. The Great Alliance came together in just 10 days. Kelrani psychics formed an early warning network that could detect Void Wraith movements across light years. Dromax warriors trained integrated combat units where species that had never worked together learned to fight as one. Fourth-Act engineers shared their most advanced defensive technologies. Humans coordinated everything, their gift for seeing patterns and connections proving invaluable for managing such a complex operation. Even former enemies joined the fight. The Korth Dai, grateful for the autonomy Jinwu had granted them, offered their finest warriors. Species from the far edges of the galaxy, who had never been part of the Empire, sent ships and volunteers. But when the Void Wraiths finally arrived, they proved to be more terrifying than the ancient records had suggested. Their ships were enormous, dark things that seemed to bend light around them. They moved through space like living creatures, and their weapons could drain the energy from entire star systems. Worst of all, they seemed to feed on conflict itself, growing stronger whenever beings fought against each other. The first battles were disasters. Traditional military tactics failed completely against enemies that could appear anywhere and strike without warning. Entire fleets vanished without a trace. Panic began to spread through the Alliance as species started to doubt whether unity could stand against such overwhelming power. Jinwu found himself alone in his quarters aboard Sol's Light, staring at tactical displays that showed nothing but retreat and defeat. The crown above his head flickered with uncertainty, reflecting his own doubts. Maybe the old nobles had been right. Maybe a maintenance worker had no business trying to save the galaxy. Then So-Jin entered, carrying a cup of the simple tea they had shared aboard the new Sol in what seemed like a lifetime ago. "Remember what you told me once?" she said, sitting beside him. "That the best way to fix something is to understand how it really works, not how you think it should work." Jinwu nodded slowly. "The Void Wraiths aren't just attacking us. They're trying to break us apart, make us fight each other." "Exactly. Every time we panic, every time species start blaming each other for defeats, they get stronger. But every time we work together, we deny them what they feed on." Jinwu stood up, feeling the throne's power flowing through him again. "Send a message to all Alliance forces. New orders coming through." The final battle took place at the edge of night, where normal space met the cosmic void from which the Wraiths had emerged. Jinwu led the Alliance fleet personally, the Sol's Light serving as command ship for the largest cooperative military effort in galactic history. But instead of fighting the Void Wraiths ship to ship, Jinwu ordered something unprecedented. Every species in the fleet began broadcasting simultaneously, not military communications, but art and music and poetry from their homeworlds. Kelrani telepaths shared emotions of hope and unity. Dromax warriors sang ancient songs of honor and courage. Humans told stories of overcoming impossible odds through cooperation. The effect on the Void Wraiths was immediate and dramatic. Creatures that fed on conflict and fear found themselves starving in the face of absolute unity. Their ships began to weaken as the Alliance forces surrounded them with expressions of everything positive about galactic civilization. "All ships, continue broadcasting," Jinwu ordered as Void Wraith vessels began to retreat toward the cosmic void. "Show them what we've built together. Show them what the galaxy can become when we stand as one." The Void Wraiths fled, unable to survive in a galaxy that had learned to celebrate diversity instead of fighting over differences. They disappeared into the dark between stars, defeated not by superior weapons, but by something they could not understand or counter. Perfect cooperation between beings who chose to see each other as family rather than enemies. In the aftermath of victory, as the Alliance fleet began the journey home, Jinwu stood once more on the observation deck of Sol's Light. The crown above his head glowed with steady, peaceful light, and he could feel the throne's approval across the vast distance back to the imperial capital. So-Jin joined him, taking his hand as they watched the stars together. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't wandered into that ceremony?" she asked. Jinwu considered the question seriously. "I think the throne would have kept waiting, maybe for years or decades or centuries. But eventually it would have found someone who understood that the galaxy's strength comes from its diversity, not from any single species dominating the others. Even if that someone was just a maintenance worker, especially if they were a maintenance worker. We understand that complex systems work best when every part is valued and maintained properly. The galaxy is just a very large, very complex system." As they stood together, watching the Alliance fleet spread out across the star field like a constellation of hope, Jinwu reflected on how far they had all come. The mockery and doubt of his early days seemed like ancient history now. The galaxy had learned what the throne of stars